My presentation is how DesignSafe-CI transformed my research and collaboration workflow. So I'm a disaster scientist and a public health researcher. I come at this from a little bit of a different perspective. I don't develop cyber infrastructure as hands-on as lots of folks are discussing, but I use it. So my research examines health outcomes following disasters from lots of different types of hazards. So natural hazards like hurricanes, wildfires, technological hazards like oil spills, and public health emergencies like COVID and others. I work with quantitative data, qualitative data. I primarily do interdisciplinary and multi-institutional work, and I work a lot with human subjects data. So things that have to be protected under federal law in very specific ways. I'm also a DesignSafe ambassador, and so that is what brings me here today. Let's see. All right, we'll roll with it. DesignSafe is a resource for natural hazards researchers. Some of you are probably familiar. It's been around for decades in some form, but traditionally it was used mostly by engineers and other physical scientists. So more recently, I'd say in the last 5 to 7 years, there has been efforts to update the platform to be social science and really public health friendly. Some of the key functionalities are data sharing, curation, and publication, integrated data analysis to support reconnaissance data. So after disasters, getting in the field quickly to survey the landscape of what's happening, what are the damages, as well as collaboration tools. So in the development process to improve, I'll say DesignSafe to be social science friendly, they did have an engaged development process. And so during that, there was a draft interface developed, and then social scientists were invited to preview and interact with that platform and to participate in an interview about functionality. So actually sitting down with someone who was working on developing it to say, well, what do you think about these features? Would you be able to use these classifications? How would your data fit here? And so I, as an early sort of person engaged in the process, participated in those interviews. The result of this is it really built excitement for the tool, and I knew that I was the target audience. So, cyber infrastructure doesn't really scream to me as a public health researcher that that's something that I can benefit from. So this was, I think, really great at creating an inclusive tool that now I was so enthusiastic about that, using it, that I was invited to be an ambassador. So the ambassadors are early adopters and champions. We were provided with some pilot funds, some lots of different types of opportunities to work with the platform. And so that has been a really great experience for me over the past, I'd say, 2 or 3 years. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about how I use DesignSafe, since I'm more of the end user than the creator. So I use it for end-to-end data management and for publishing. And I came to DesignSafe with the idea that, I'd be able to publish my data reuse. That seemed really great. I had no idea what end-to-end data management could look like until I got involved. And so really it's the end-to-end data management that's kept me as involved as I have been. So just a few screenshots so you see what I see as a user and how I'm leveraging the tool. So this is end-to-end data management. So these are my projects that I have currently. Inside of a project, each project can be described in various ways, and there's a lot of guidance for users. And then I can actually indicate my team to give access to all of the data in here. I am able to put in Readme files so that even, if I'm not able to provide great training, I can tell people, go read the Readme file. That's how it's structured. And everyone can be on the same page. For me, the end-to-end data management solved a lot of problems that I was having. So this is an example inside of the definitions for a project where I can indicate team members. So this really provided a secure shared space for data and addressed a lot of questions like who owns the data, how to securely share it both within my institution and across institutions, and how to move it when people change institutions or graduate. So just a couple of examples here. So I was previously last year, and for the 7 years prior, I was at a liberal arts college that didn't have a ton of IT support of any type. So I was able to use DesignSafe to securely store my data and share my data with my collaborators across institutions. I was in all of my grant proposals to NSF that I was going to manage my data using DesignSafe, and also in all of my IRBs, the institutional review board that governs human subjects research. Another example, so since 2018, I've had a field study that I manage in DesignSafe. And I have a doctoral student at another institution, and she did some initial reconnaissance fieldwork with me and decided to build her dissertation on it. So she collected a whole second set of interviews as for a subpopulation within my study. But then she's at another institution where she has her own IRB and has to explain who owns her data. So she really wanted her data to live with the rest of the study data. So she was able to write into her dissertation proposal, her institutional review board application, that the data is not owned by her institution, but lives in DesignSafe with the rest of the study. So she graduates, and that data is not, sort of compartmentalized at a university that's hard to access. Just a couple of examples, but I have others. This is what the publishing platform looks like. These are actually things that I have published. It's great for my CV as well as for dissemination. So this, the last item you see getting a little cut off is actually a social determinants of health and COVID-19 health data collection instrument repository that was people contributed from all across the US. We were able to publish it. So now folks are able to cite this in their grant applications whenever they're writing that they're going to do a survey focused on the health elements included. In addition to being able to publish the data, there's also a lot of sort of interim things that can be published. So for me, I'm doing, sometimes timely. So my primary area is food insecurity after disaster. So COVID certainly really brought that into everyone's attention nationally, globally. And so I was able to publish on my results as I was still working on my studies using the publishing tool here for research briefs. And I was also able to put my instruments out there for others to use. So DesignSafe really promotes fair data. You've probably heard a lot of it, but I'll just point out the specific features. So the data curation process that's built into the DesignSafe, working in DesignSafe process for researchers supports accessibility and interoperability through really their curation services. So there are detailed user guides for how to curate your data before preparing. And then one of the best things I think that NERI and DesignSafe offer are the virtual office hours for all of the elements in DesignSafe. So I work with Maria Esteva the most on curation, because I don't use some of the other tools that are in there. But that is really a game changer, because as you're trying to navigate and you get errors and you're not exactly sure the best way to share something to be the most accessible or the most interoperable, there's an expert that's there every week with time to answer your questions. And then publishing in and of itself supports the F and the R. So Findability, so a DOI for everything that I publish. Data is out there for reuse. So I'm able to direct students, hey, you want to work with me, grab some data. Also over time, I will not live forever. So future generations will be able to look back and say, oh, what did food insecurity look like during COVID-19? Or what did it look like after Hurricane Katrina? Also the protocols are out there, so that's great for replication. And I use it a lot for dissemination as well. We were asked to talk about some challenges. And so I have some pretty distinct challenges that I don't actually think are well addressed yet in the DesignSafe CI platform, and they're really related to the fact that I work with health data. So there are some regulatory challenges with publishing. So when I have human subjects data, so data that individuals provide about their personal experiences, perceptions, health, I'm required to follow the Health and Human Services federal laws on protecting human subjects. So there's a whole set of de-identification that has to happen. And that is something that DesignSafe and partnered with TAC, I think, has the capability to do. But I think that it hasn't been done that much. So I think there's just a lot of questions and uncertainty. So myself as a researcher and being responsible as PI to protect that information, that's something that I'm thinking about a lot. I think even less well addressed is publishing qualitative data. So myself, I have, interviews that have been transcribed, and I'd like to publish that data, but people are sharing rich descriptions about their lives. And so drawing the line of what's identifiable is something that is really challenging. I've had collaborators that have gone through the whole process with DesignSafe to try to publish and get to a point, well, we just can't be sure, right? So end up having to say, reach out to the researcher if you're interested. So I think that this is an area that that needs some work in the sort of data reuse, data publishing sphere. Related, I think that permissions within DesignSafe are not robust enough at this time. So I can add someone to a project, but I can't control permissions within the project. So when you have human subjects data or less experienced and more experienced researchers on your team, so think undergrads, masters, doctoral students, postdocs, they all have different levels of engagement in a project sometimes. But I'm not able to control different elements and who has permission to see what. So functionally, what I end up doing is creating multiple projects, which is not great from my perspective. Sometimes, things end up in the wrong place, or one thing ends up somewhere and it needs to be somewhere else. So that creates, I think, extra work. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.